Pompey Sound. Updates, the latest from Fratton Park, on the hour, every hour. Fueled by Piglet's Pantry. Click pigletspantry.co.uk to get your fill.
John Messino is acknowledging that there is still work to be done in the transfer market for Pompey and the recruitment team, saying,
"There's still a bit of work to do, and the season has crept upon us really quickly. The position is just the same, really. We have to wait to do the right players at the right time, and we don't rush anything. We have to make sure we don't fill the squad with players we don't feel are ready to make that step up to the first team. That's quite exciting and it's quite challenging, but we're getting there. That's still the case. A winger is a priority, especially as the middle of the park was an area we need to strengthen." Going into the season with Marlon, Doz and Terry, who's been more of a utility player, meant that was an area we wanted to improve. Now we're looking at 3 top players joining us there in Luke, John and Mark, so we've moved away from the middle of the park now, and certainly bolstering options wide is a priority. Decent wingers cost a lot of money. Good players come at a premium. That's the way it is, and it's probably the way it's always been. But certainly it's been exacerbated in this window. We've seen some of the high fees which have been paid across the board. It's something we certainly have to be smart about with recruitment.
Yeah, and they're keeping it smart, and we're glad that they're keeping it smart. But I think we can also read into what John Messino has to say at the moment, that there is the possibility of a decent fee being paid for a decent player in the not too distant future. We do have another 3 or 4 weeks of the transfer window still to run, so there's still plenty of time. And it seems likely that Pompey have identified at least one player that they would be prepared, provided the Eisners go along with it, to buy. And that always is the icing on the cake for the football fan. To know that the team has been prepared carefully throughout the close season for the coming season is an improvement, on paper at least, on the team that went out and did so well for Pompey in the previous season. They'd look to be an improved squad, and what would be the icing on the cake would be a solid victory against the Dutch side on Saturday. And then, even if it doesn't happen until after the season has begun, even if it doesn't happen until after the Oxford game is already history, a big signing coming in, it just puts a spring in the step of everybody connected with the football club when it happens. Now, we're not talking about 10 million here. No, I know it's somebody else's money and you shouldn't spend somebody else's money, but 2 or 3 million would be very nice. Thank you.
Pompey's hopes of signing Alfie Whiteman have come to an end after his trial period at Fratton Park wrapped up this week. Head coach John Messino confirmed a former Spurs keeper has moved on, though the club is still looking to add another shot stopper before the season starts. Whiteman, who ended his decade-long spell with Tottenham this summer, had been training with Portsmouth during pre-season. The 26-year-old got some minutes under his belt in the friendly win at Woking and a behind-closed-doors match against Crawley. However, he was absent for Saturday's Reading clash and didn't feature in last night's game against Hawks at Wesley Park. After the goalless draw, Messino said, "Alfie's moved on from his trial now and hasn't been with us this week, but we'll be keeping tabs on where he ends up." Despite Whiteman's departure, Messino remains keen to have 4 keepers in his first-team squad this season. Nick Schmidt, the current number 1 after impressing in his first year at Fratton Park, with Ben Killip and Jordan Archer providing backup. "We still want 4 keepers in the squad, though it's not our top priority right now," Messino explained. "The market's a bit thin at the moment, but we'll see what develops over the next week or so. It's important for training quality and overall depth in that position." Earlier this week, Messino detailed why having 4 keepers is crucial. "With Nick as our established number 1 after his performances last season and success with Austria, it can be tricky attracting others, but we need the numbers for training. When we're running multiple practice games, having 4 keepers helps maintain high standards." Meanwhile, Archer has been linked with League Two side Salford, with Messino suggesting he wouldn't block a move if the former Millwall keeper wanted to leave. Young keeper Toby Stewart is also on the books, but is spending the season on loan at St Johnstone. While acknowledging the current shortage of available keepers, Messino expects more options to emerge as the transfer window progresses.
Pompey's determination to have 4 goalkeepers on their books during this coming season is absolutely clear, crystal clear. And yet it's got a lot of Pompey fans scratching their heads because it's unprecedented and it seems surplus to requirements. It seems as though there's going to be a player on our books who is going to be drawing down a satisfactory wage and is never going to get anywhere near the subs bench, never mind about threaten Schmidt. as number one goalkeeper. So it's a difficult job to recruit from Pompey's point of view. And Mousinho is being quite naked in saying that it's mainly in order to ensure that training matches, 7-a-sides, I guess, and maybe 5-a-sides too, but you can get, with a full squad, you can get 2 7-a-side games going. And it's clear from the amount of matches that Pompey are playing in the run-up to the season that Pompey invest a great deal of hope and expectation in actual playing time. It's all very well doing sit-ups and long runs and sprints and medicine ball stuff. I don't know what it is they do, and dribbling round cones and what have you. All of that is fine and dandy. Those key technical skills and key fitness levels, very, very important. But there's something called match fitness, isn't there? There's a sharpness that clearly Pompey believe you only get if you're playing combative football. Not too combative, because we don't want training accidents. They happen. They always will. They always have. They can't be avoided completely. But no 50-50s is a phrase that you probably hear 2 or 3 times a day on every club's training ground. But 4 goalkeepers, back to that. It could equally possibly be a case of our goalkeeping coach, Joe Perdomo, who has been very successful in his tenure in that role. I think he looks after set pieces as well as the keepers. Is he empire building? I don't know the bloke. I can't imagine. He wouldn't get that past John Mousinho anyway, because John Mousinho has an eagle eye. So John Mousinho is on board with this one. He wants a 4th goalkeeper. And Mousinho has been saying just very recently that it's a difficult recruitment because of the hierarchy that already exists and is pretty much set in stone unless Nick Schmidt suddenly starts having a string of howlers, that whoever is hired, as said earlier in this piece, is very unlikely to need to turn out in his kit on a Saturday afternoon. So it's an interesting one. It will perhaps set a precedent that Pompey will follow through down the years ahead and the decades ahead. And indeed other clubs may follow suit. If you're going to have lots of meaningful 7-a-side games going on, then you do need 4 goalkeepers. So there's an enormous and simple logic to it. Just wonder why nobody's ever thought of it before. Let's see how it goes. We're looking for a decent keeper who's prepared to be number 4. And we coined a phrase the other day which was a bit crude, but I'll repeat it because it sort of sums the whole thing up. That he's going to be somebody for the training ground. He is effectively going to be an animated cone. Harsh.
Portsmouth battled to a 0-0 draw against local rivals HAVANT and Waterlooville in their latest pre-season friendly at Wesley Park. The Hawks nearly stole it late on when Ryan Seeger stepped up to take a penalty, but Pompey keeper Ben Killip pulled off a fantastic save to keep the scores level. Blues boss John Mousinho fielded a mixed side against their Southern League neighbours, giving valuable playing time to returning defender Iban Boat. The first half was a fairly quiet affair, with few clear-cut chances to get the decent-sized crowd excited. Boat got his head to a Zach Swanson corner, but couldn't make proper contact. The Hawks created the first real opportunity after 17 minutes, when Nana Owusu broke through, only to fire tamely at Killip. At the other end, no one could get on the end of a dangerous cross from former Hawk Swan. Killip was called into action again, standing tall to deny Hawks captain Seeger. The game then started opening up, with Pompey looking more dangerous going forward. Paddy Lane went close with a header from a tight angle after good work from Swanson. The visitors kept pushing as half-time approached, with Boat heading over from Lane's free kick. After the break, Pompey brought on academy prospects Michael Anei and Fraser Thomas for Boat and Swan. Terry Devlin had an early chance but couldn't trouble Hawks keeper Ben Dudzinski. The Blues continued to threaten, with Lane's stinging shot lacking direction, and Jacob Farrell heading a good chance off target from Swanson's pinpoint free kick. As the game wore on, Mousinho gave plenty of academy players a run-out, finishing with almost an entire youth team on the pitch bar keeper Killip. The young guns held their own against more experienced opposition, with defenders Ruben Buckland and George Wilson particularly impressive in containing Hawks striker Harvey Bradbury. The hosts nearly snatched it at the death after winning a penalty, but Killip's heroics denied both Seeger's spot kick and Brendan Wilson's point-blank header in the dying moments.
John Messino on the 0-0 with HAVANT and Waterlooville, which could very easily have been a slim defeat.
They had the penalty right at the end, although I think that it was a fairly even game in terms of chances. There wasn't very much created at either end of the pitch, and so a draw was probably the fair result in the end. But there were far more pressing things we wanted from the game, and we were happy with how the young players performed at the end. There wasn't very much created at either end of the pitch, and so a draw was probably the fair result in the end. It wasn't just that they were academy players, but 4 of them were from the under-16s and had their first taste of men's football. A lot of the others were first-year scholars, mixed in with some second years, and they all equipped themselves well. It was an excellent lesson for those young lads to be able to compete with what is a very strong side at their level. To be able to mix it with some ex-pros, and in front of what was a big crowd at Wesley Park, was a good opportunity for them. Ibane Boat started the contest after missing the whole of last season with a knee problem, but was taken off at the break. Messineo said, "That was planned after the minutes he also got at Reading at the weekend. We want to make sure we manage him properly. He had some niggly injuries in pre-season, but he's training consistently now and we have to build on that."
We're gradually getting a very clear idea of the importance that John Messino attaches to actual game time compared to other training activities. It's important that the players are fit and that they are supple and that they are strong, and that means a great deal of gym work and exercises out on the grass. It's important that they know what they're doing at set pieces. They no doubt have plenty of sessions inside the building of the training ground in front of a whiteboard where tactics are discussed and formations are discussed and patterns of play are analysed and given to the players. All of that goes on. But there is this essential thing which is match fitness. Is that the right phrase? Match fitness? Match sharpness, which you can only get by playing lots of games. And Pompey have played the right amount of competitive football, of the right sort of competition in the build-up to the start of the new season. And, of course, on Saturday, we have the sternest test, I guess. I don't think Crawley would stand in the way of that judgment, or Reading. That the sternest test so far, exactly 7 days before we take on Oxford United in our first game of the season. So the gradual development, the gradual acceleration of the intensity of the friendlies that Pompey are playing in the run-up to the beginning of the new season is measured, and it looks absolutely foolproof. It looks like it's been beautifully constructed. So what have we learned? Well, we've learned that the team are fit, the team are strong, they've been getting fitter and they've been getting stronger in terms of footballing prowess as the season heaves into view. But we've also seen an interesting integration, particularly with this last friendly, of the various planes and plateaus of Portsmouth Football Club as far as the playing staff and coaching staff are concerned. Because at HAVANT, you had a side that at one point in the game I read was made up entirely of academy players. So all of the academy coaching staff would have been there. But they'd effectively lent their players to John Messino, who would have been, obviously, the overall head coach, therefore the man in charge of what was going on the pitch. It was him who decided the substitutions, with the advice, obviously, of the academy coaching staff. But it was down to John Messino. And you think of all the good things that have come about because of the way Pompey staffed that game on the pitch. We gave a run out to some players. I don't know why Terry Devlin needed a run out. Did he need a run out? Are they just getting him up to peak match sharpness, which he may not have been at in their judgment prior to the game, but he had a run out and no doubt played allegedly where he wants. Boat had another go, and Ben had a go in goal as well, who is looking increasingly in favour with the coaching staff at Pompey. And so you had this integration. That obviously you can't integrate Portsmouth women into the academy stroke first team setup. But what you can do, of course, is to isolate the important units, because a playing staff consists of a number of subunits. So we now know the defence, and we're solid about the defence. We know who our starting 5 defenders, counting the goalkeeper, will be. And we're getting there with the midfield as well. And we know who our number 9 is, and will be our number 9 until he decides to call it a day. Colby Bishop is our nailed-on, one of our few nailed-on players. Although we do have several, actually, nailed-on players. So we know pretty much who the first team is, and that means that we also know who the support team is. We're going to call them that, even though I don't think John Messina would approve. But there is a supporting team of players who are going to find themselves often on the bench because they have a job to do, and when they come on, they will do it. But they're not quite ready to start. It's only injury, or perhaps if a player fluffs his lines consistently and needs a break, they might actually make the starting 11. All footballers want to be in the starting 11, of course. It just makes you feel good about yourself. It makes your family feel good about you if you're in the starting 11. If you're on the pitch waiting to kick off at 3 o'clock, then you are esteemed, and more esteemed than if you're warming the bench. So we have within the first team squad perhaps 8 or 9 players who are nailed on and will start, and then we have a support team. But surrounding that squad, now we have the beginnings of an integrated academy set up, because we've got one of our youngsters is loaned now to St Johnstone. And then we've got the boy Clout, who has got a shirt number. And you can see what John Messina is doing here. He is building the sense amongst the academy that they can make it, that the door is open for them. They've got to knock hard enough to get through and become part of the other squad, which is the men. We don't have a reserve team at Pompey. There used to be a Pompey Reserves. We don't have an under-21 or an under-23 side. Some people lament that, but because we've become so good at finding talent out elsewhere and bringing in loan players elsewhere, and now it begins to look as though we are nurturing properly the talent of our youngsters. There were some under-16s out there against HAVANT. How fantastic is that? How good do they feel this morning and tomorrow morning, and when they come to Fratton to see the Dutch side, hopefully get a good beating on Saturday? How good will they feel about themselves? So there are lots of good things happening in this pre-season build-up, besides the results, which have all been pretty favourable, haven't they? A lot of clean sheets and quite a few goals. And mixing up their first team with some academy youngsters who are not yet old enough to vote. Will they be old enough to vote when they have this new change in the legislation which is being brought before Parliament? Is it 16 people are going to be able to vote? Well, if they're under 16s, they still won't be able to vote. But there they are, playing alongside gigantic men such as Boat and Devlin. Fantastic. So, all in all, so far, so good. A definite 9.5 out of 10 for Pompey's pre-season build-up.